Yeah.
Okay, you're live.
Okay, so we're waiting for one more person to arrive, but we're going to start the meeting anyways because we have some other time constraints, so we're going to get to what we can. So, calling the meeting to order, it's 5:35 on July 12th, 2023, Finance Board meeting, and our first, can you hear us okay, Carrie?
Yep.
Oh, and here's Alex.
Howdy.
Woo! We just called the meeting to order. You have
Hey,
missed
here's the
nothing.
movie star.
Can you give me a bit, Pat?
So our first order of business is to welcome Carrie Goodwin, our newest committee member. Thank you for stepping up, and maybe we'll just go through and quickly introduce ourselves. Can you see us and everything okay, too?
A little bit, yeah.
All right, so we'll go from left to right.
Okay, I'm Melissa Baker. I'm currently the secretary.
And I'm Ruth, we've met.
Jim Scanlon.
Bill O'Neill.
Alex Woods.
So, so thank you again for joining us, and maybe at another meeting, we'll talk a little bit more when we're all in person about an introduction. Sorry, cannot hear me. Okay, so the second item on the agenda is reorganizing the board. Since this is a new fiscal year for us and we have a new member, we would traditionally reorganize. I am open to discussion. I am perfectly happy to sacrifice, well, it's not a sacrifice because it's a vote of the board, but, you know, I've been the chair for a couple of years. I was the secretary for, 5 or so years before that, and kind of an assistant chair along the way. So if anybody else would like to discuss any sort of intention or desire to step up and have some other roles in the board, then I just don't want anyone to think that we would have to keep the roles as they are. So we're open to discussion. We're also open to discussion and then tabling votes until our next meeting if everybody wants to work through their thoughts a little bit as to how we may want to organize/reorganize. So, thoughts? Anyone?
The only thing I think is I don't think you can be chair for more than 2 consecutive years, so we might have to change the chair. I don't particularly want it, but I'll step up into any other role that the committee needs me to do.
That's true.
I'm checking the policies now. I believe it is, but I believe it's geared towards the Board of Selectmen, but I'm not certain, so I'm just taking a look now, but you may be correct.
Yeah,
But that hasn't been followed at all.
I think I was on the Board of Selectmen when we did it, because part of the thing was, you know, there were certain committees that were chaired by certain people for so long that when those persons left, things kind of fell apart because they had been carrying the baton and so much of the weight for so long that nobody really, you know, knew how to catch on after that. The rec committee is a great example. The Groveland Day is another great example. There were just too few people did too much, and when they left, nobody knew where all the pieces were. So it kind of all fell apart. So I think we instituted that just to keep fresh bodies moving, fresh minds in, and so there was, you know, a continuing passing of the baton that didn't take place, you know, every decade, but every couple of, you know, 3 years or so.
So the policy that I found that they recently adopted, or as part of their collective policies, was originally approved by the Board of Selectmen on September 6, 2016, and then amended in October 17, 2016, and then amended again on May 30th, 2017, and essentially states that eligibility, only Groveland residents shall be eligible for appointment or for service on appointed boards, committees, and commissions. A member may hold the position of chair for no longer than 2 consecutive years, except for the time served filling the unexpired term of the previous chair. Attendance except for extraordinary circumstances. Any person who has failed to attend 51% in any 6-month time period or 3 consecutive scheduled meetings of a board, committee, and commission shall be considered to have resigned, and then the selectman shall appoint a successor to serve that unexpired term. And then the terms of the appointments as established. All appointments shall typically expire June 30th of the year of expiration. Vacancies caused by resignation shall be filled immediately if more than 3 months remain in the unexpired term. The selectmen shall make exception to these rules only under extraordinary circumstances. So that is part of their appointments to boards and committees policies that they have.
So the short answer is you only can serve 2 terms.
I'm sorry,
So the short answer is you can serve 2 consecutive terms
you
only.
didn't enjoy my long answer?
No, I didn't. Okay. I need a lawyer.
About 2 terms, but I wasn't quite sure.
Looking for the Reader's Digest condensed version.
My apologies. To answer the question, that is correct, Mr. Scanlon.
Okay. You know how I am, brief. Okay. So I guess we have no choice. But
I wish I knew
we
that.
have not enforced it because I know of at least one person that's, yeah. So, but are we ready to make an motion for reorganization? What
I
do you-
move we table it till the
Next
committee can
meeting.
have further consideration of each individual's plans and desires. Give us time to think about, the availability we have, the bandwidth we have,
Yeah,
and what we're willing to do.
I'll second that.
Any other further discussion? Vote on tabling?
Yes.
Oh, actually, once it's seconded.
Oh, it has to
it's-
be, we have to do a roll call because she's remote.
Do we, or once it's tabled, it's tabled?
We still have, the votes all have to be roll call just because she's remote.
You know what, I thought once the table is seconded, that ends it.
After the vote, because the vote could be defeated.
I need a cigarette now.
I thought it did have to be a roll
Jesus
call vote,
Christ.
or it had to be voted in order to
So we'll
successfully
do a
be
roll call
tabled.
vote on table till our next meeting.
People watching.
Yeah,
Motion to table, yes.
Ruth, yes.
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Yes.
Alex. Carrie.
Yes.
unanimous.
Unanimous. Okay, table till our next meeting. The next item is just the ethics training and documentation. I will forward the email from the town clerk, but I wanted to just address it here as well, that there is the annual ethics certification that everybody needs to do, and there needs, I think the format has changed this year or last year, and we need to all just follow the instructions on the email, which I will forward, and make sure that that please gets completed. And I think that a document of some type needs to be signed and turned in, and I don't know if that's electronically or paper. Does anybody know? Has anybody
I
completed
used to
it?
just send it back to the town clerk.
So is he lowering
Yeah.
his salary?
That's every 2 years, right?
I don't know, she just mentioned it to me. I wanted to make sure I mentioned it to everybody. So I'm addressing it, look out for the email, and please follow the instructions. The next issue was regarding the salary study, and that there has been some discussion about making some changes to it. And this is really just more informational to make sure that everybody was aware what was going on with that. But I think that that has been readdressed, and is it going back? I think that there was a legal opinion that's kind of paused us in our tracks, correct?
Yes, so it was stated that the individual had reached out to town council to get a legal opinion, but the question asked was not necessarily it was specific to the situation, it was more general and broad in nature. So upon further discussion with town council, it was identified that there is an article in which we fix the salaries, and although those salaries were not listed in the warrant, that the boards that made that executive decision being the finance board, as well as the board of selectmen, as well as the board of selectmen as the, as by default, the personnel advisory board, which is identified as part of our general bylaw, as well as within our personnel policies manual. Therefore, those were set. So while they were not listed, the actual salaries had been addressed by those parties and therefore set. And that article that followed the omnibus, I believe it was Article 46, in fact, fixes those salaries for both appointed and elected individuals.
For 1 year.
For 1 year, correct.
So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that there was some sort of conversation taking place on the Board of Selectmen meetings, if you have or haven't been watching them. But the matter is now paused again due to what the town administrator just indicated, so it's kind of not an issue for us to consider at this point in time, I guess. Year-end transfers, it's really what caused this meeting to be called today, so, and I attached it to the agenda. I don't have it with me, but can you maybe, Rebecca, just address what the transfers were for?
Yes, so we have two line items that we need transfers for to close out the fiscal year. One of them is the group health insurance. When we were doing our analysis prior to the request to do the original transfers, we had taken a look at the year as a whole and not the later part of the year, which was a more accurate description of what we would need to have on hand in order to finish out the fiscal year. And therefore, we need an additional $6,000 for property and casualty insurance. We also need a transfer, and we are looking for an amount of $9,000. As we had mentioned previously, we had a couple of claims that were filed against the town, and therefore, we had some deductible payments that were not factored into our budgeted number. That led to us not being able to fulfill our commitment to VZ Memorial Park and to fund half of the insurance payments. So we needed to adjust those figures in order to make sure that we could cover those expenses. You'll see that that's the transfer to side. The transfer from side, we chose the Council on Aging Director salary line item. That line item has, that position had been vacant for a good portion of the last fiscal year. As you've seen in prior transfers, we could have done from multiple different sources to come up with the final $15,000 we needed, but where there was a nice round lump sum of money that we could take from, we just figured that we would use that line item as a way to supplement that, since it's coming all from the same bucket, essentially. So we're looking for a total of $15,000 in transfers.
Okay.
What was the total of the last transfers that we did?
Good question. I can tell you that in just 1 second.
I got 81,700 from my notes.
81,700.
12,700 from PD and 10,000 from fire department.
All right, almost 100,000. Okay.
Anybody want to make a motion to approve the transfers as indicated?
I'm making a motion that we approve the transfers as stated for $15,000.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Questions, comments? Okay. We will take a vote. Melissa?
Yes.
Ruth, yes. Jim?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
All right, unanimous. Meeting minutes.
I sent out the meeting minutes for, let's see, what were they? The April 5th meeting. I've not gotten any comments or questions on them.
I read them. All good. So first we'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
I'll second that.
Seconded. So any further discussion? I did read them, and everything looked complete. I can't say who actually made the motion and seconded. I trust that the recordings are all accurate, but yes, everything looked very complete, and so great job as always. Thank you. So we'll move that to a vote. Melissa?
Yes.
Ruth, yes.
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
And Carrie,
Was not there.
you would have to
Abstain.
abstain because you were not at that meeting,
I abstain.
so. And did the minutes say that we were all here, all of the people that just voted?
Yes, everyone was there. It's the one we talked about, the warrant articles.
Sarah was here, but
Right, Sarah was here, but
Oh.
she's not on the board.
So the next item is the Chapter 70 study group, and I just wanted to, this isn't really anything that we need to take action on, this is just me just updating everybody that after the last town meeting and town election, when the override passed, narrowly passed, there was just so much conversation this year about the biggest issue that we have, in my opinion, which is the school budget and the increases in the school budget. And so Kathy, Selectman Castronellis, created a little study group. She opened it up. A few people said that they would be willing to spend some time organizing data, just looking deeper into it and trying to really get a better understanding. I know that we keep saying that we need to talk to the legislators, and I think that that is happening, but I think that there's, we need to have better information of exactly what it is that we are able to advocate for. Make it easy for them, or easier for them. Find better understanding of this complicated, super complicated formula, because it just wasn't a fun place to be. It wasn't a fun budget season, and we want to make some sort of positive progress in this. So, and Kathy, fortunately, is a math teacher, and she has the summer off, so she's got time to really dig into it. So I said that I would do a little bit of work with her on that. I think that Melissa also said that she could do some research, and I just wanted to let the group know that that's kind of taking place. Next item on the agenda is the Community Preservation Committee representative. Jim, if you want to talk a little bit about that?
The way it's formed is that there are members selected from the town to participate in the CBC, and that is so when people come before the CPC in the beginning of the year, we review all the requests, with whether they're recreation, historical, and or affordable housing. And it's a group. There's like a selectman representative, then there's a rec committee representative, then there's a I don't know if it's conservation, but so we all represent and we vote, and whether we support the submissions. So I've been the representative on this as the finance representation. I thought that maybe someone else would like the opportunity to join that board, so I'm throwing it out there. You know what I mean, Alex? Okay. So I would prefer not to be doing it, but if I have to, I will. But I want,
a month
there is no schedule.
schedule.
And I will say, if it makes any of the other members interested in potentially serving on such, there is not much of a time commitment as there is with some of the other boards. They don't tend to meet as regularly. They seem to meet more so in the November, December timeframe when applications are due, and then when applications are reviewed in the springtime prior to town meeting. The rest of the year, they don't really necessarily meet unless there is a great need to, whether or not there's a need to move some administrative funds in order to help provide additional support or to authorize additional expenditures in relation to the approved community preservation projects by the town meeting. So, I mean, Jim can speak more to it, but the schedule-wise, it really isn't
No,
too
it's
much of
not.
a time
It's not a
commitment.
lot. And then, of course, they have to get the support of the finance board as a whole, and they have to get the support of the selectmen, and then it has to go to the town meeting to be voted on. So it goes through an elaborate process, as any expenditure thing would go through. So is anyone interested in joining? You? There we go. All right, congratulations.
Well,
Okay.
condolences, Richard.
Yeah. No,
Do you need more than one person?
excuse me?
She wants to know if it can
Do
be
you
more
need
than
more
one
than
person.
one person, or is it just one person?
We only.
That you're looking for.
It's only one person per.
It's only one person.
Okay.
Why were you interested?
I was going to throw my hat in, yeah, but you beat me to it.
Do we want to incorporate it into discussing when we do the board
We
reorganization?
can do that.
That way people can evaluate,
All right.
like, both of those at the same time.
Yeah,
I'll go for that.
yeah. Everyone can think about it and think about time commitments and maybe even get a little more information on it if you want to, so we'll do that.
Yep.
But I'm
Yep.
thrilled to know that we have a couple of alternatives, a couple
There
of
we
people
go.
that are willing to. So,
That's the power of my influence.
I like Mike.
Mike who? Oh, Mike, okay.
so, so this was, I don't even know that we need to take a
You don't need a vote on that.
vote. This was just a agenda item just to bring up the topic, so. Town administrator updates?
I don't have much. I know Ellen is here, our town accountant, so she can update you if you have any specific questions with how we are processing year end and getting ready for the tax rate recap. We did have an initial meeting with the town clerk, the assessing manager, the treasurer collector, as well as the water and sewer superintendent in terms of all of the forms that we need to fill out and prepare so that we can get that set earlier. I know the last few years, we've been a little bit later to the game in terms of setting our tax rate. We have tried to reach out to our contractor over, it's not Patriots Properties, but they help us with our evaluations and setting those rates, setting those figures. So they typically do Groveland at the very end of October, which is why we usually set the rate in the November timeframe. And we've asked them if we could potentially start that process earlier so that we could set the tax rate in the October timeframe, and again, push us to meeting those deadlines that we established in the financial policies and actually making them happen. I don't know if, Ellen, you'd like to add anything about the year-end work that you've been working on?
This week I've been working on just getting that Vadar set up. We received,
I don't, want to make sure you're close.
we signed up for more software, so department heads, instead of entering their invoices onto a spreadsheet, they're entering it right into Vadar, and then my end becomes more of the review process that it should be. So we've been spending a lot of time setting that up. As far as year end, we're in great shape. We're reconciled through May, we're working on June. And I think we'll be able to meet the deadlines. I don't know about the assessor side. Again, she had that conversation with them, and I don't know where that ended up. I think we're gonna try to push it sort of a month at a time, a month a year back until we got to where we needed to. Because it does have an effect on the assessed values.
Yes.
So we wanted to make sure it wasn't a large effect. But other than that, we are on track.
So other, like we said, other news was that we were working with departments on Vadar software and getting that up and running. We have started also the process with ClearGov to fix our accounts. We had struggled a little bit in terms of getting the information that we had assembled originally into a format that we could utilize. We had a lot of cleanup with the accounts in terms of, older accounts that were no longer utilized, that were being duplicated, and things of that nature. So hopefully that will be rectified, and we can use that software program to its fullest extent this upcoming fiscal year. That would mean that as we start the budgeting process, which has already begun about 2 months ago, we can then start to make sure that departments have access to that database so that we can start working a little bit more sooner than we have in the past. And that would mean that even for your budget book, we're hoping that we can utilize the digital budget book so that we don't have those binders and that you always have the information accessible to you right on your computer so that you can see it in real time, and we have that historical data as needed. So we are working really great with some of the newer software systems that we have put in place. We've been communicating with them also about using a strategies plan, some newer software that will allow us to take a closer look more at project intimate items that we're looking at, specifically maybe if we're talking about if a department really wants to start tracking how they're operating throughout the fiscal year in terms of their budget that they've assembled, how they're drawing down on their expense line items, what they're using them for, how they're actually making things happen. And it gives you a really great look at how, like, milestones, when their goals, how they expect to meet those goals. And I think that for the finance board will be a really great tool, because you'll actually be able to see and not only speak with them at these meetings as to what's happening. So that includes utilizing the data in the fun ways that we like with charts and graphs, but it also means adding photos and adding narrative, and really lets the department really showcase themselves. So we're really excited about potentially utilizing that software and bringing that forward. So we've been making a lot of great strides, and as we said, we're following the policies and procedures, so we are trying to make our headway on that. So it's been very, very busy, but other than those little updates, I don't have much.
What about the year end, now that we finished the year end? How did we do our expenses versus our budget? Was there a fair amount of turnbacks? Is that going to, fall to free cash, or more or less than average, or?
We have some estimated figures as of now, I believe.
I have two different estimates that are very widely different, but it's all based on like special revenue funds and where they stand, which those should come back up. So I want to clarify, very loose estimate. I don't have, don't bank on this number, but it's going to be, I think, between 500,000 to 600,000 free cash. It depends on where, I don't have, AR isn't completely reconciled yet for June. It depends on what those balances are, what deferred revenue is, and then it depends on our special revenue funds. If any of them ended up negative and we don't get the money in by a certain date, they'll count that against free cash. But everybody's working on getting that in. So you do, I know we want the number, but you kind of want to wait, because I think we have till September 30th to get.
No, I was just curious how we
to get that money
generally
in.
came in against the budgeted number, that's all. The expenses, I guess the expenses versus the budget. We finished the transfers now, we know, for
can
instance,
more.
that there was,
I see what you're saying. You want to know what fell to the bottom line?
yeah,
Give me 1 second, it just closed on me for some reason.
or that we did a good job or a consistent job holding the line, staying within the budget, staying within the plan, that kind of stuff.
Yes, we definitely did that.
What will I do with my big bag if I don't have a big budget book to carry around all the time?
Oh, so I do know that there's some creatures of habit, and I'm not opposed to still creating some of those for those that desperately would like to have one, but it is a lot of work. So it not only will it, maybe you'll have to pick up some other way to lift some weights. For me, it definitely provides a lot more time to focus on the actual budget instead of tabs and binders and printing and copying and making sure they're updated, et cetera. But if I have to do-
Content rather than format.
Yes, exactly. But if I have to do 1 or 2 or whatever, that is very acceptable. But if to have to do 12, it
Yeah,
does move
I
it.
think we could utilize you in a better way than putting together
I have
that
a feeling you're right.
book. So,
While Ellen's looking for some numbers, do you want to talk about our next meeting? Or were you ready? Sorry.
It's thinking.
So
This is a little slower than mine.
if we stuck to in general, we've targeted or earmarked the third Wednesday of the month. We had this one on the second Wednesday because we had a deadline. So the third Wednesday of August would be August 16th. And I don't know if anybody happens to know how that affects their summer plans.
I'm on vacation that week.
You're on vacation that week?
I could do the 9th.
I mean, the third Wednesday or whatever, we should have a regular schedule, so it's got to be fixed.
I know, and we do, and we had to change it this week
No, I
because we had a
understand that,
deadline.
yeah.
And I'm just saying, since we're all here, we can either target the third week, because that's what we always do, but if there are vacations that the group would rather consider, because it's August, and we don't have a lot of deadlines, I mean, later in the season, we map out the whole entire budget season planning, but, so I guess I'm just, if you feel strongly the third Wednesday is better, if you aren't able to make it, I guess that's just for consideration of the board and vote of the board, what works best. I can make any of them, I can remote in as I need to. So I'm flexible, I'm just trying to accommodate everybody else.
I'm open either date, so it doesn't matter to me.
16th and the what?
9th and 16th,
Okay.
9th or 16th.
I can do either one.
I'm available both.
So you're not available the 9th, and you're not available the 16th. Then I guess we'll keep it the 16th if that's the metric that we've earmarked, and then
Are we still going to do,
I think that poses a problem for reorganization of the board, though.
I'll pick a date that works.
I think we should do the 9th, and if you can't make it, you can't make it, and that's fine. But if we know that the 16th is definitely a no, and the 9th is a maybe, then I'll choose the 9th.
Is everyone okay with the 9th?
Yeah, works for me.
Everybody else was okay with the 9th?
Let's do
I
it.
will not be available. I'm going to the library trustees meeting, but if I have any updates or anything of that nature, I can provide a memo, and I don't know if Ellen is available, but if necessary, we can have Ellen make sure that she's available on that date if nothing comes up.
And is 5:30 better than 5 o'clock, so people can come after work?
Yeah, for me at least.
Okay.
Yeah, if not later. I mean, for those of us that actually work not at home,
I know, but then when the staff is here, then it's, we're just trying to sort of accommodate everybody as best we can. The staff's been here since the morning, and,
Remember, Capital used to be at 7:30.
I know I was on it with, so was FinCom.
so, okay, the 9th at 5:30. Any other items not anticipated at time of posting? Does anyone have anything else to talk about? Yes?
Yeah, just speaking of budget, I mean, the word ought to go out early and often to the district that they've got to get their fiscal house in order. I mean, they've had caused 2 overrides in a row. The last year, I mean, it couldn't have passed by less than it did. They won't be successful again. So they really need to sharpen their pencils. And this needs to be said early and often, that they've got to get that house in order. Financially, they've just got to get that house in order, or they will bankrupt these 3 towns.
We continue to meet with the school district regularly, monthly, as we have this last year, which has been extremely helpful and definitely opens the lines of communication. But I did just hear at our last meeting that Mr. LeBrecq will be retiring, so they have advertised for a new business manager. So I'm not sure how that will impact the way that they present the information and when that information is presented. But it has been reiterated that the information needs to be shared a lot sooner, as much as possible, so that we can have those conversations earlier to make sure that we can accommodate and that we don't have to go through that process again. But just to alert the board that that was something that had been shared with me, so I'm not sure whether or not they have an extension plan in place. We didn't ask per se whether or not he would be staying on for an interim period of time unless they were able to find somebody, or what the transition plan would be with the new person, and whether or not he would still stay on in the beginning of the budgetary process. So that throws a lot of unknowns into that equation as well. But I would agree with you.
I don't see the likelihood unless we start getting real aggressive and doing studies and all that's great, but we need a lot of help in that area, and it's political, okay? And we'll just walk into another year with another override. I hate to say it that way, but I don't see that it's not going to happen, okay? So we either got to figure out how to live with overrides, because I personally think that Prop 2.5 was great when it was passed. It doesn't work anymore. Doesn't work. Insurance companies don't care about it. Nobody cares about it, okay? So, but I agree with Bill, the school has to manage the resources much better. And I'd like to see the school committee, rather than always go along, come up and be more aggressive with the administration at the school. But having said that, we let the state senator and the state rep off too easily, you know? That's my personal opinion, okay? Now, it's nice that we have to compete with North Andover for a representative. Mr. Bruce Tarr, we have to compete with larger towns. But we need to get them on board. I don't see that happening. They just had a legislative session. There's no mention of upping these Chapter 70 funds, none. So I can tell you the end of the story at this pace. We're going to have another override.
And I'll tell you the end of that story, it'll fail. But the part of the problem, Jim, is Senator Tarr and former Representative Merritt did all they could. The problem is when you get to Beacon Hill, they are consistently and outvoted by numbers that are bigger than ours in the bigger districts that have the bigger cities. And that's where the money ends up going. It's a numbers game. It really
Yeah,
is.
I'm
And
not
the districts
buying
out
that.
here always lose. Well, Jim, when you have X amount of money and it's going to be divided, and 3 guys over there are for Boston and 4 guys over there are for Springfield and 1 guy is from Pawtucket, who do you think is going to get the money? And that's part of the problem. It's not divvied up based on need, it's
All right,
divvied up based
so-
on politics.
So we'll have an override forever. That's how it's going to turn out.
But
But with that, you got to scream a little bit louder, okay?
No doubt.
I mean, I hate driving down this road because there's no, they can't even paint yellow lines, okay? I mean, Christ, okay? All I see is photo ops, okay? And, you know, it's nice handshaking senior citizens and all that crap, okay? But the real work is get noisy and get something done. And I support the parents. They want to have good schools, so I'm kind of in a mixed reaction here. If you don't give them the money, you just wind up...
Keep electing the same folks and expect to change, that's the definition of insanity.
Yeah, well...
That's part of our problem.
Well, right,
That's on us.
well, yeah, so I think we're in a dilemma here, and...
But we haven't had, it hasn't been override year over year over year over year over year. This is the first override, aside from the school building project, this is the first operational override. Last year, there was one requested, it failed. This year, part of it was for new expenses, and part of it was to replenish what was cut last year due to the failed override. So This year is the first time we've had an override in, how many years was it? 16? 16. So I'm not.
We'll have another one.
But I'm saying something has recently changed with the funding, the spending, all of it. And the school can sharpen their pencils all they want. You can only cut costs for so long. Costs keep going up, and the funding is off. And maybe a new business manager will look at the whole entire process with bright eyes, but I think that the school was transparent this year. I think it's deeply complicated. I don't think it's a matter of just find places to cut without having a tremendous amount of pain. And it's complicated. It's really complicated. There are no simple answers. That's why we're in this conundrum that we're in.
No doubt. But there is things you can control. There are things, like Jim said, healthcare, insurance, properties, those are beyond your control. But there are things in the budget. I know I run a couple of companies. There are things you can control in the budget. And those things have to be brought in control as best as possible because, the math just doesn't work. And it's just basically simple math at this point. You can't ask for Y if we only have X.
No, you can't, but then you're talking about cuts, and so it's not simple math. It's a complicated equation.
It's complicated solutions, but it's simple math. You have X, you don't have Y. You've got to fill that gap. That's where really the problem solving comes in. How do you fill that hole? And a lot of it is beyond our control because 64 cents of every dollar we collect in this town, they take. Leaves us 36 cents to do a whole lot of stuff with. And next year, they move it up to, 67, 68 cents on a dollar.
Don't forget about the Whittier new high school.
I'm trying to forget about that because I heard the cost is astronomical.
Yeah, right.
I mean, beyond what's even
Yeah,
fathomable.
with all the shops,
Hmm?
maybe, with
Yeah.
all the shops, so. So, well, we're not going to solve anything on that topic, so.
Not today.
I believe Ellen has the updated
Oh.
figure for the request as well. Sorry, of course.
So we're leaving behind around 300,000, which is, I think, the highest we've had since I've been here.
Oh, that's good.
I think last year it was like 94, the year before it was 120, that might be vice versa. That's part of the loose free cash calculation I did. So that is included in there. But that's excellent, so.
That is, good
Kudos
job.
to
Policies work.
Rebecca and our department heads for managing their budgets.
Great. And the only other thing is we still have some seats open, so anybody that knows anybody else that would like to join the board, talk to your friends, talk to the residents. We have alternate seats that are open, so that's that. Anything else? Anyone else? Motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Any other discussion? No? So roll call vote. Melissa?
Yes.
Ruth, yes. Jim?
Jim, yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Congratulations, your first meeting is done. Thank you very much. So, okay, thank you.